Hi everyone, my name is Charlie, and today I thought that I would talk about dealing with inadequacy as a writer. Basically, I think I have struggled with the issue of feeling inadequate as a writer in the past, and I thought about why don't we just see whether anyone else has those same insecurities. Basically, as we know, currently I am releasing my own books, and they are comedic monologues. I am proud of those books. However, I will oftentimes find myself looking at other writers who have released books at my age or younger, or even within the same genre, that seem to be better. That perhaps a writer of my own age isn't necessarily releasing comedic monologues, but they are writing extremely brilliant poetry, well crafted, well edited, or they are writing these experimental works, or that they really go into the human psyche and discuss extremely serious issues, or they are just brilliant books. And I don't know, I feel like as writers we're told we're going to feel inadequate at times. But it's a strange sensation. I mentioned this because it happened to me last night. I was watching things on YouTube, as I'm regularly doing, and I happened across a writer who was talking about their work, and I was like, oh, well, this sounds brilliant, and this sounds better than what you're doing. And then I realised you can't actually... Well, I didn't realise this. I explained to myself once again, you cannot hold yourself up to the same standard as somebody who's writing something completely different, who isn't necessarily, who is in a different league to you. You are in different leagues. I am one in a different country. I am working on different types of fiction, and I think that I'm quite good at it. My brother and sister still say that I am the least funny person in the world, but the over 50s seem to really get my humour, so I think that it's working in my favour. And this other person is writing something extremely serious, and I think my biggest problem is I don't feel smart enough to be a writer. I think that that's it. I feel like I always had this big view of writers as getting every single book of essays and reading it and writing responses to it. I got the Hollywood version of the serious writer stuck in my mind when I was younger, and they are always having responses to stuff. They're constantly critically thinking, and I just don't feel smart enough to be a critical thinker. I'm here on YouTube posting reviews, and then I'll go and watch somebody else's review and I'll think, well, they actually managed to capture it a lot better than I can, and I don't feel eloquent enough. I feel decidedly common most of the time, and whilst I'm proud enough to say to people that I'm working class, I don't want to be one of these people that's kind of turning being stupid into a commodity and making out being dumb and not knowing things is a really good thing. And most of the knowledge that I have from comedy comes from watching comedy. It comes from finding out what makes me laugh, finding out what doesn't make me laugh, and deciding what I want to create. Most of the humour that I write works audibly, because that's how I wrote the thing. I wrote the thing with a very definite way of saying the sentences to induce laughs, and I don't know, I never thought that I still can't read extremely dry non-fiction to save my life, but I still don't think that I have these very in-depth responses to things. Like, I'll see people and they'll be reviewing something and they'll be talking about the way the writer did something. I was like, well, I didn't notice that. You're probably correct. And I can remember being at university and we had the whole thing of reading as a writer, and I remember that it really ruined reading for me, this whole thing of reading as a writer, because I felt like I had to look at every single book and see what the writer was trying to do with their work. And because of that, like, it took me a long time after I'd left uni to actually want to be reading books for sheer pleasure. Like, I did take some time off there to just, like, before I went back into reading stuff, and I wasn't necessarily reading the best things in the world, but it was just where I was at that time. And I don't know, sometimes I get this feeling like I've wasted my years, and that maybe I should have focused more on being a critical thinker and actually finding out what other writers were looking at, and reading more craft text, reading more interviews with writers, watching more interviews with writers, seeing how the writers that inspire me actually work. But then I also think you've developed this way of writing yourself. You want to be more relaxed as a writer. I got incredibly stressed out 2 years ago just because I gave myself a deadline, and maybe that's my problem. Maybe I feel like I ought to have more pressure on myself than I have got. I don't know, do I want to be challenged more? It's a very strange minefield, really. I use that word a lot because I do have a few common phrases that I just stick to. But it's definitely a lot for me to think about. Like, are feelings of inadequacy common with writers, and is it something that I'm just going to have to get used to? Because I had kind of stuck with this whole thing of I can't measure myself by this other person's successes and this other person's thought processes. I can't look at the way other writers work. Like, yeah. I also question whether I should try and get how much try and raise the amount that I'm writing, write more, not necessarily the best work, but just get it down on the page, because, like, I haven't finished a project in a year, and I feel like I could be finishing more if I stuck to it. Yesterday, if we look at my reading, I read 3 books yesterday simply because I knuckled down and wanted to do it. And, like, I know that I could do the same with writing. I once wrote a novel in 2 days. I mean, I haven't done it since because it was terrible. It ruined me. But then I know that I also wrote the equivalent in a week, and I can write vast amount of words very quickly, even though they're shit. And I just don't do that, and end up feeling like I am not doing enough. So yeah, what do you think? What are we talking about? Let's try and get this into some questions that you can answer in the comments, or you can feel free to just discuss your own feelings towards feeling inadequate as a writer, but maybe just feelings of inadequacy in general. Do you think that most writers experience feelings of inadequacy that also go into those feelings of self-doubt? Or do you think, once again, it's all in my head and I should just go downstairs and have a second cup of tea? Please answer in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, that is all.